On the day before Anzac Day, the unveiling of the Silvan War Memorial took place. This was the culmination of the work by many dedicated local residents, including the Wandin Rotary and the sub-branch of the Mount Evelyn RSL. The ceremony started with a slow march to the memorial by the Royal Australian Navy Catafalque Party. Anthony McAleer, a local historian, was the master of ceremonies.
Can I start by thanking you all for making the effort to be here today. Today we come together to commemorate and remember those from Silvan who has served, suffered and died for our nation in time of war.
The guest speaker, Rear Admiral John Lord AM, Chair of the Victorian Veterans Council, spoke to the gathering about the importance of memorials.
So 25% of our school children are immigrants, and about half of them, or half of their parents, are also immigrants and proud of their adopted country, Australia. So indeed my legacy and our legacy is to ensure young Australians learn about war and conflict and the personal sacrifices that have shaped the country we have today.
The retired Rear Admiral, with Tony Robertson, then unveiled the Silvan Honour Roll. James Merlino, MLA, the Deputy Premier and the Minister for Education, outlined the history of Silvan's Avenue of Honour. Made up of 32 flowering gum trees, Silvan's Avenue of Honour was planted in Ray Crescent in Mount Evelyn just after World War I. Each tree bore a plaque representing a Silvan resident who had died serving in World War I and was surrounded by a wooden fence. Sadly, the Avenue of Honour fell into disrepair and was removed in the 1980s, causing much dissent.
So moving forward to recent times, as the centenary of World War I loomed, it was decided that the names that were originally honoured on the Avenue of Honour should again be acknowledged publicly, just as our forebears intended in 1918, but this time in Silvan, which brings us to today, where once again we gather as a community to honour Silvan's World War I servicemen and proudly rededicate the Silvan Avenue of Honour, this time in Silvan, and in a way that is more permanent, so that in 100 years' time, Silvan residents will still be able to gather at this spot and be able to look upon the service and sacrifice of these men who left from this township to serve our nation a century ago. In closing, can I sincerely thank Mount Evelyn RSL and Wandin Rotary for their foresight. This is a wonderful day for Silvan and wouldn't have happened without the hard work, dedication, passion of everyone involved. So thank you very much.
He, together with the Mayor of the Shire of Yarraranges, Councillor Jason Callanan, unveiled the Silvan Avenue of Honour plaque. The Mayor then congratulated all involved in the project.
I'm not going to say too many words. I'm just very proud to see a memorial now here in Silvan, in my patch. It's been very exciting to see it go up in the last few weeks, and I just want to congratulate all those involved. It was a big team effort, and I hope everybody here can enjoy and look upon this spot now as a remembrance for all those that have sacrificed their life in any of the wars, and thank you again for everybody turning up. It's a great turnout. Thank you.
Tony Smith, our federal member for Casey and Speaker of the House of Representatives, spoke about the life of Major William Scurry, the inventor of the self-firing rifle mechanism, which was responsible for the highly successful evacuation of Gallipoli. Major Scurry was born in Carlton, grew up in Ascot Vale and joined the AIF in 1914. He was sent to Gallipoli in 1915. Tony Smith takes up the story after this young soldier arrived at the front 4 weeks before the evacuation.
By this time, the situation in the Dardanelles was dire, and the military leadership was contemplating an evacuation. All plans estimated a loss of up to 30% of the troops, because leaving would be as perilous as the landing had been on the first Anzac Day, with Anzacs rowing in boats under machine gun fire. But in his trench, Bill Scurry thought, and I quote, "It occurred to me that if we could leave our rifles firing, we might get away safely." He then set about inventing his time-release rifle. What he created was simple, yet effective. set a loaded rifle up on sandbags, place a ration tin full of water on top that then leaked into another below. The bottom tin would be attached to a string that was tied to the trigger, and when it filled, it would fall with a jerk, discharging the rifle. Depending on the size of the hole, it could take up to 20 minutes or an hour to fill. On the 19th of December 1915, the Scurry time-release rifles were set up all over the Gallipoli Peninsula, and rear parties were detailed to fill the water tins at the last possible moment. Bill Scurry remained with the 7th Battalion's rear party, and he noted that all the way down the beach it sounded like any other night, with sporadic rifle fire breaking the silence. By December the 20th, all of our troops had been secretly evacuated without the loss of a single life. In fact, it was so successful that it took half a day before the enemy realised the Anzacs had gone. Bill Scurry was later awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal for his efforts in inventing the time-release gun. On the ship back to Australia, he met and later married Sister Doris Barry, an Australian nurse who had served in France. They had 4 daughters together, and we're very proud to have one of them here with us today, Judith Story. After the war, his poor eyesight meant he couldn't return to his previous job as an architectural modeller, so he took up a soldier settlement block here in Silvan. He grew berries and passion fruit and was a popular member of the community. It was during this period he served as president of the Lilydale RSL. Eventually health issues forced him off the land, but by this stage World War II had arrived and he enlisted again, this time being promoted to Major and serving with the 17th Garrison Battalion. He was later made Commandant of the Japanese civilian internment camp at Tatura. After the war, he moved to Croydon and he passed away in 1963.
Mr. Smith, accompanied by Major Scurry's daughter, Mrs. Judith Story, unveiled a memorial plaque to Major Scurry. Commodore Jim Dixon spoke about the life and contribution of Australia's first leader and founder of the Royal Australian Navy, Vice Admiral Sir William Rooke Creswell. Born in England in 1852, he joined the Royal Navy at the age of 13. Having served for 13 years and travelling the world, he left the Royal Navy after being wounded while serving in the China Sea. After migrating to Australia, he joined the South Australian Colonial Navy in 1886, being appointed leader some 6 years later. After moving to Queensland, the captain was appointed as the first naval officer commanding Commonwealth forces in 1905.
It was that service which earned him the admiration, gratitude and respect of the nation, and the reason why he's still regarded with awe today. He was determined that Australia should quickly establish a fleet capable initially of contributing to and ultimately capable in its own right of defending the new nation's maritime interests, securing our trade routes and guarding our borders. The fear of war hung over Europe in the early years of the 20th century, and there was scant support for major expenditure on far-flung lands of the British Empire. Despite setback after setback, Creswell persisted, and by 1911, when both the Australian and the Canadian navies were granted letters patent, which changed the title of our navy to the Royal Australian Navy, orders had been placed for the nucleus of a fleet of modern generation ships to replace the motley collection of outdated vessels transferred from the individual colonial states at the time of Federation. The first of these new vessels sailed into Sydney Harbour on the 4th of October 1913, and on that date His Majesty's Australian Fleet was established. A great believer in the customs and traditions of the Royal Navy, Creswell ensured that they were instilled in the officers and men of the Royal Australian Navy from the outset. The need for a steady hand at the tiller discouraged any thought of replacing him as head of the RAN while World War I continued. By the time he retired in 19, he'd laid a very sound foundation for Australia's Navy. And I'm confident that though it has undergone enormous change in the years since he relinquished command, he'll be proud of the professionalism, standards and reputation the RAN of today has acquired. It was on his retirement that he was promoted to Vice Admiral and came here to Silvan to buy a farm. He died in 1933 and he was honoured with a state funeral.
He, together with Mrs. Rosemary Creswell, then unveiled the memorial plaque to the memory of Vice Admiral Creswell. The State MLA, Christine Fife, then spoke before reading out the Silvan Roll of Honour.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and especially to Wandon Rotary, whose drive has made this happen today. The work that they have done on this memorial has been tremendous. I understand several were working yesterday installing the plaques. It gives us somewhere to come and the opportunity to remember those who gave so much so that we have the freedom that we have today, so people like myself could migrate to this great country. We're not here today celebrating war. We're here today remembering these men who gave so much in 3 wars.
The ceremony concluded with the last post and reveille. Ray Barrett, President of the Rotary Club of Wandon, then spoke briefly after the ceremony had concluded.
Thank you, Anthony. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the Rotary Club of Wandon is honoured that this marvellous memorial project unveiled today has been our contribution to commemorate the centenary of World War I. Not only because it pays tribute in a permanent way to the service and sacrifice of those from Silvan, but also because it gives this community a place to come together on days of national significance to commemorate its heritage.
Trevor Julian, our reporter, spoke to Mrs. Judith Story, daughter of Major William Scurry, after the ceremony.
And we're fortunate to have with us today Mrs. Story, who is the daughter of Major William Scurry, who, as a young Lance Corporal, invented the mechanism for the delayed action rifle in Gallipoli. But behind every individual, whether they're ingenious as he was and a hero as he was, there's a story as a person. And in his case, Mr. Story could perhaps tell us something about Major Scurry as a father.
Oh, yes, I will. He was the only father I've ever known, and he was a wonderful man as far as we were concerned as children. He was wonderful. A very humble, wonderful sense of humour, and mind you, he was quite capable of giving us a good whack when he caught my twin sister and I smoking up behind the garage. But you know, we got into a lot of trouble at times, but he never really hurt us by any, he'd so-called give us a strap, but of course it didn't really hurt. No, he was a great man, and we were all very proud of him. I had three other sisters, and we all were very proud, but he was a lovely person to live with, he was a very easy man to live with.
Oh, that's wonderful. And of course he had injuries from his service.
Yes, he was blinded in one eye, and then when after he was married, the shrapnel moved in his head and it blinded the other eye. So he lost all the sight of his eyes, but he had an artificial retina in his glasses for the one. So he had about 13% eyesight in one eye, and the other eye was blind.
Oh,
that was pretty hard.
Very difficult, yes. Yes, and your mother was a nurse?
My mother was a trained nurse, yes. Yes, Sister Barry.
Right, and I believe they met on the way home.
They met on the way home on the ship, yes. It was very, very romantic.
That's a lovely story.
Yeah, it was a lovely story, yes. And they were a very happy couple. She, unfortunately, in the end, got rheumatoid arthritis and was in a wheelchair, and she used to look after him in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And he looked after her in the end. So it was a lovely story.
It is a beautiful story.
Yes, it is.
And you grew up here in Silvan?
We grew up, yes. They had a strawberry farm down, I don't really know where I am, so I don't know whether it was down there or down there. But it was before you got to the township of Silvan, coming up. And it was a lovely red soil strawberry farm that he was able to do because he couldn't do much work. We had a lovely old draft horse called Rabbit. And it was a lovely childhood place.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you found it a lovely place to be brought up as a child?
Oh, yes, yes. I think, though, that anywhere would have been good when you've got lovely parents, don't you think?
That's very true. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you for asking me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.